Welcome. You're listening to the Film in Vermont podcast, a series where conversations with Vermont creatives are explored. This is episode 4, and today's guest is Dillon. Dillon is a filmmaker, and perhaps equally as important, a community leader and organizer. He's a founder and one of a small team running the Mothership Monthly Film Festival in Burlington, Vermont. The self-proclaimed most monthly film festival in Vermont is an ongoing monthly film festival where filmmakers have 1 month to make a film of 7 minutes or less that's related to the month's theme. During the event, the audience at the screening decides the winner by popular vote, and the winner is then endowed with the responsibility of choosing the next month's theme. Dillon's latest and first feature documentary, Roland and Mary, a winner of towing in the Northeast Kingdom, is a beautifully human story of a couple who own a towing company and all the challenges that come with piling health concerns and bills and the inevitable difficulties of running a small business in a small rural setting. It's heartwarming, it's heartbreaking, and humorous all in one package in an extremely personal and unfeigned verite style documentary. Dillon's soft-spoken and kind-hearted, curious nature made for a really wonderful conversation about being a creative person here in Vermont, creating community, and fostering the needs of it where it previously didn't exist, and what he sees for the future of filmmaking in the state. Yeah, so really, just to kind of set the stage with this all, the intention of the project's to be a bit of a companion piece to the new website database, but also to collect a lot of different perspectives from a lot of different people from all over Vermont who work in the creative media field or are involved in filmmaking in some way. And also just for me to be able to connect with folks and hear people's stories. I mean, as filmmakers, we are inherently storytellers, and so there's something that's really interesting for me about being able to do that as well. So everyone's different. I could talk to 20 different people who consider themselves directors, and they would all have a slightly different variation of what that means to them to be a director. So to start off with, as it relates to film and creative media, what would you consider yourself? I assume the answer is going to be you wear a lot of different hats, but what is kind of like your primary definition of what you do?
Yeah, I guess you're right that it's like a lot of different hats. But I guess filmmaker would still be like the most appropriate umbrella to put that under. But I would guess I would add film festival runner to that.
In terms of, that's obviously a big part of it that I'm sure we'll get into, the film festival runner piece, but what does it mean to you to be a filmmaker in the scope of being in a place like Vermont? And how do you see yourself kind of fitting into the fabric of the film and creative media tapestry that we have here, primarily in Burlington, where you're located, because you're very much ingrained in things that are going on there. And I'd say kind of a tastemaker of sorts of somebody who's making things happen.
I love Vermont and I love being here in Burlington. And as far as like storytelling goes, I think there's a lot of fascinating little worlds here in the state. So I think it's a great place to be. I mean, I guess like the world is small, so there's not like an infinite number of like cinematographers to choose from like there are in California or New York, but um the crew that does exist here I feel like is pretty tight knit and it's easy to meet everybody and it feels more communal, I think, than it would in a bigger city.
You mentioned cinematographers specifically. I know that you've done some work on a couple of John Schlag's projects, right?
Yeah.
Can you maybe elucidate on how that relationship came to be and how the two of you found each other, just kind of as like a connection point? Because I feel like a lot of folks, just find out about each other and have a discussion at like a networking event or at something like Mothership, and then they end up working together down the line. So how did that come about?
I don't remember if I met him first at one of the Friday morning meetups or if it was an MMFF, but I think he approached me at an MMFF with the idea of doing some stuff together.
And I mean, two of there are three different films, is that right? And two of them were like specifically dance related and experimental in nature, kind of.
Yeah. One of them was for the fest, and yeah. And the reason that I guess some context about the fest and John is that he just made a film for the second one ever, and so kind of put him in the playing field. And then
Uh,
yeah, like you were saying, there's three different films. Two of them were dance. One of them is called Gravity, that showed at the Gravity episode of the fest. And then another one's called Painstaking, which we shot at the Media Factory.
I feel like that to me it seems like a pretty big challenge. How did you, as someone who's behind the camera or making major decisions about the look of a film like that, how, you know, as movement being such a big element of it, how did you kind of make decisions around the vibe and emotion of a film like that, where, you know, the actors, I guess you would say, or the dancers that are in it are moving so much? Did you find that to be particularly difficult?
You know, I would say out of the three that we shot, Empty Nester was far more challenging to shoot.
Hmm.
The dynamism in the Painstaking film comes from the animation and green screen work. So that was a really simple shoot. And Gravity was primarily like a handheld venture and sort of a run and gun kind of vibe to
Hmm.
it. So neither of those were like really mapped out, but Empty Nester was really mapped out, and that was just one really long day. And there was a lot more decision making that went into that one as far as the look and the shape of the story,
Uh-huh.
moving parts too. Like there was some animation in there, and framing for that, and trying to set ourselves up well for that.
You know, you kind of like talking about going back to, you know, being a filmmaker and like dabbling in all sorts of different genre and stuff too. Um, you know, where does your heart lie? Because you also, I rewatched Roland and Mary the other night, and it's, I mean, it's really touching and heartwarming, and sad at the same time too. But like, where does like your heart kind of lie in terms of what type of stuff, at least at this moment in time, that you're really excited about making?
I think I had a shift a while ago that was like my initial interest, like from a young age, like being in high school and in college. I had much more of an interest in narrative films, specifically like either had a creative bent or a comedic bend. Um, Creative bend doesn't narrow it down at all, but or I guess like magical realism was a big thing for me. I really liked like Charlie Kaufman
Hmm.
and films with practical effects, and I really liked animation as well. Like I loved Adventure Time, but also like this this like Czech animator Jan Spunkmeyer. Um, those are some of my like primary motivators starting out, and then through narrative, like eventually found Werner Herzog, and then like made sort of a bridge in my brain to documentary. And I started becoming more interested in documentary just because like I was young, poorly experienced in the world, and feeling a little narrow in my like perspective and
Uh-huh.
experience, and I felt like documentary seemed like a exciting way to like broaden my experience of the world.
Now, how did Roland and Mary come about in terms of you meeting them? What's the backstory, and how did the idea for following them around, with this very verite kind of a vibe to it, take shape for you?
um they literally just they picked me up. I was living in like a big red bread truck at the time with my ex-girlfriend, And we broke down in St. Johnsbury, and the first place we called was very expensive,
Mm-hmm.
and the second place we called was about half. And a surly woman answered the phone like, "What do you want?" And, and when they came to pick us up, they were just immediately so funny and um, engaging and open with us. So just watching them like throw chains at each other, call each other bitch and asshole, but in like an endearing way. And then they like gave us a ride. And during that ride, Roland just really opened up, which I think he's just prone to do. And they were really memorable characters. So a year later, I no longer had the van. COVID was starting, gone through a breakup, and I just like took off in another van, like from Atlanta back up to Vermont, and they were still in my head.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. I just thought, fuck it, like let's see if this could happen. And I called Mary and Roland and just pitched the idea to them. And Roland was like, I asked him, and he just immediately started telling me about this story about how his tooth fell out. I was just like, all right, I think this is a good sign. And Mary was just like, yeah, maybe we'll see. And I kind of just started making plans what, on a big maybe, but, and I never really got more than that, but it just, it did happen.
Mm-hmm. That's, I think, for all of its faults in terms of industry and stuff here, I think that's what we do have is like there's just a gold mine of people like them who it's such a human story, right? Like the suffering that they go through, the unknowns of, will we make enough to pay rent next month even or make groceries and I need to still keep working even though I'm in such bad shape and getting to an age where I should be retired. Yeah, I don't know. It hit the other night when I rewatched it really hit me and it was it's really you did a beautiful job capturing that and just kind of being there. And I think I guess I'd ask like what was your process like for aside from like calling and saying, hey, I have this idea, did you really have to kind of ease into it with them, or were they really open and willing to like having a camera? Because I feel like when you try to document something, inherently the second a camera's involved, like the documentation piece of it and documenting reality gets thrown out the window a little bit because people are going to be a little bit hesitant to how they react and things like that. But was it like that from the get-go with them, or were they pretty just how they were with or without a camera around?
I will preface by saying that it was my first documentary and I had no idea what I was doing and didn't make a plan. Um, and just brought the camera along first day that we planned to meet up and just started filming and Roland was just immediately down for it and just talking,
Mm-hmm.
um, telling stories. Mary took a lot longer, so that was just something I just realized I needed to have patience with, and I gave her time, and eventually, just like some light prodding, like she eventually agreed. And so most of the filming that I did with her was like towards the very end of our time together. Um, but she features almost just as much as Roland does.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's that real beautiful moment after eating in the diner and they both get into their respective trucks and pull away in opposite directions. That sits with me too. That just like the visual of that just came back to me. And there's like a moment of hesitance before they're moving away from each other. But yeah, it's hard to believe that's your first doc. It's just such a human story, and I think that you managed to capture these people so brilliantly.
Thank you so much for saying that. Yeah, I think a lot of it comes down to um, them also just being incredibly open and gracious, and but just also being amazing characters. They just hold the screen.
Mm-hmm. So maybe we can shift gears a little bit and talk about Mothership, and maybe if you could just give me like the pitch of where did the idea come from, and how did it initially get off the ground? Well, first and foremost, I guess it's this incredibly aspirational thing where it's a monthly film festival that happens every single month, which is kind of remarkable in its own right, that you guys were able to pull it all together and continuously have people participating and also an audience. But where did where did
Yeah.
the seed for the idea come from?
Yeah, I guess it seems like it's so much work, but it's like, the filmmakers are the ones that are doing most of the work. So we've kind of got this thing down. There's a lot, there's stuff that's sort of like open to creativity every time, but a lot of it we sort of have oiled into a functional machine. Um, but so yeah, a lot of it just comes down to like just like spreading the work around. Like there's just like the people that make the show happen are the people that make films. So I think that's really what's made it successful, is just like people being game for it. And I think that's why we get good turnout and everything, is just because there's so many people that are making films and they're bringing people, and it just like kind of gives you this built-in audience. But the idea I think I'd had for a while. It's something that I'd wanted to do. I'd heard about other festivals like it, like Channel 101, which is like a Los Angeles based episodic festival. I don't even know if they called it a film festival, but it was started by Dan Harmon, of Community and Rick and Morty and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but that was more like, you would come in with like a little TV show, and if you passed on to the next round, you would have to make another episode of the TV show, which I thought was a really cool format. Um, so hearing about stuff like that just sounded really fun. And I think after having made Roland and Mary, which was a 2.5, 3 year commitment, and a big editing slog, um, I think I wanted to do something like that. Like I'd made short films in my 20s and in college and even in high school, but like it had been a while since I'd like um really dug into that, and felt like I maybe had skipped a step a little bit, like of really just getting in there and experimenting and stuff. So I wanted to give myself that opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
Um So and also just having like the deadline and the like reason to make creative work, because it was like, I just find myself always sitting around and thinking that I'll make something soon, but not having the context to do so.
Mm-hmm.
And so yeah, that's been another huge gift of it, is just having that context to make something.
Yeah, I feel like we can always just make excuses of why not to do things, but if you sign up for something, and it seems like a big part of it was probably timely too. It's like people at the point in time when you guys launched this thing were really embracing and seeking a community right after coming out of COVID and everything. It's like, okay, now I'm creating this thing for this event, for this audience that I know is going to be there. Yeah, I think that having that deadline and having those restraints to put yourself in is probably something that all of us as creatives could use a little bit more of.
Yeah, and I think there was like, I don't think I realized it at the time creating it, but I think there was like some, I think there's some precedence for it. I think there's like Burlington is just like a very community oriented place and very artistically active. And there's been things in the past here um, that have pointed towards uh, the success of this kind of venture.
Mhm.
And I know that CCTV is like super different in the way that it's, like news based or whatever, but it just kind of shows you like that there's a legacy of like civic and artistic engagement and people coming together. So in a way I feel like I'm like indebted to to Burlington's other functions like that have predated the fest.
Mhm. What do you hope for the future for it? Do you think that there's credence to having like exponential growth, or do you hope it kind of stays this very grassrootsy kind of a thing?
I mean, I think our growth has been like very steady. Um and I think that feels good. Um I feel like the whole point of it is for it to be localized. Um I don't really I don't know even know what the purpose would be for it to become like a, you know, broader. I feel like the hyper localization of it is like the point.
Mhm.
Like
It's something that really resonates deep with me, and I think permeates every aspect of our life as humans, and also more specifically as Vermonters. That hyper localization of things, worrying about what's happening here and now in our direct communities, and supporting one another, being there, coming together. And specifically as it relates to film industry, not trying to force fit what we can do here into some sort of a mold that exists in New York or LA or Atlanta. What works best for Vermont, and how can we lift each other up? And those kind of things take patience, and they take time, and they take individuals that are willing to put in the work to make it happen, and support from those that don't have the bandwidth to do so as well. This idea that we should be taking care of each other and taking care of our communities, and that could be something like helping them pull their car out of the snow with your tractor, or showing up to an event to watch their film. Such is the case with what Dillon and his crew are doing with Mothership.
people come every month and gather, and it feels sort of like an old like a like I don't know. I'm just thinking about like Shakespeare days or something when they didn't have film or they didn't have like uh this whole medium didn't exist yet, and people would just gather for like this in-person experience. And that's been something that I also didn't really like estimate before starting it, but has been just like a gift, is like um coming and having this like in-person event, because like I guess a lot of like the film world now is like digital and it's online,
Mm-hmm.
and you just like make a YouTube video or you make a whole ass film and then you put it on YouTube or you put it on Amazon and then you get comments, and that's like the level of engagement that you can receive. But um the beauty of the fest is like coming once a month and like having a real in-person reaction and way to engage with the people who've just seen it. Um Yeah. I think it being local is the point. Like, I don't know. I feel like another thing is like a lot of the way that we entertain ourselves is through like Netflix or Hulu and these like big mediums like that. And it's been really gratifying to see something like film, which has been going in that direction more, like streaming and stuff, and like
Mhm.
having like the ability to entertain ourselves, within our own little world.
Well, yeah, and I think it's also like it's also a proving ground too. I feel like was having this discussion with a friend a little while ago about some like networking events that we have gone to in the past, and in a lot of ways, those end up turning into like almost like a like complaint fest about like, well, I'm not really working on anything right now because of X, Y, and Z. And I was hoping that maybe you needed a gaffer or something like that. And that's why I came to this, because I'm trying to network with people that potentially could get me jobs. Whereas it very much feels like you're doing it for like just for the sake of sharing and being together. And it's also in some ways, I imagine, like kind of a proving ground for some people where it may be their first film that they've worked on. I think I've seen that quite a few people have made a film for the very first time, specifically because of what you guys are doing at Mothership, but also
Yeah.
an opportunity to be like, oh, you know what? Like, I feel like I have a really keen visual eye for something. And I see that like you had really great sound in your project. So maybe we could work together. And like that connection point is something that I don't think can be um, overstated enough, how important that is, what you all are doing, and connecting people in a real and kind of concrete type of a way.
Yeah, it's been really beautiful to see that kind of thing grow and to see like the best feeling is like when somebody comes 1 month and we're talking after the fest and they're all excited, and then the next month they come with a film that's like their first film, and there's like something, there was one film the previous month that really resonated with them, and then they come and with their own vision and like step into the playing field. Yeah, that's one of the best things.
Now, do you want to talk at all about your day gig or anything like that, or and how that kind of work dovetails with creative media in the state? We don't have to.
Sure. I mean, I like also do video and photo for work. Finally, it's taken me like 15 years to make that work, and it's now working for the first time. And yeah, I don't know. I have a pretty good case of ADHD, and I like really can't like. It's really hard for me to work on things unless I have this like sort of like a knack or like a interest or engagement.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like been helpful for me to like build this skill set and stay in this world where I can I don't know, I just feel motivated.
Yeah, and I guess I think that regretfully, for better or worse, like the work that you all are doing, like a lot of like the commercial stuff or like the short form doc stuff for companies and branding work and stuff like that is kind of how filmmakers and creatives are going to be able to stay afloat in many ways in the state, in the absence of like you know large scale production after large scale production coming in every other month, which
Yeah,
sadly I don't think is ever going to be the case. We might be able to make steps for the future to rope in some two a year or one a year, but I think that being able to kind of work in a bunch of different kind of areas that sit under the umbrella of creative media and film and photography and stuff is how we're going to be able to survive as creatives.
totally. Yeah, I feel like in Vermont you really kind of gotta be able to do all of that, unless you're in weddings, and I think you can. Then I think you can probably make it happen.
Hmm. So what do you see for the future of of industry or filmmaking in the state? Where would you like to see it go?
I hope that Vermont can sort of realize its niche with like the bigger film world, and realize that um, a lot of people would come here for films if we had the appropriate like incentives and stuff for it, and there could be more work and more creative stuff happening here if there was like an industry around it. Um, but I also hope that I don't want it to get to the level of like Atlanta where I came from,
Mm-hmm.
because like I don't know, a lot of that work is just, you know, uh, massive Hollywood productions. Um, and is I don't know, it's just not the film world that I'm excited about, which is, you know, like making films on your own with your friends or making documentaries and um yeah, yeah, the whole like industry of Hollywood and these massive sequels and films is, I don't know, it's like not a world that I can really exist in.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like Vermont's not really set up for that, and I would hate to see just like um giant trucks and trailers all over Waitsfield or, you know, Richmond or whatever. But I think there is like a way to bring some of that in, without it being these like massive films. I think we could still have incentives for it, for, you know, I think a lot of independent film could operate here really nicely.
Mm-hmm. And what's coming up next for you? Do you have any projects that are in the back of your mind or that you're excited about?
Yeah, I have some documentary ideas that I want to get to. I mean, the fest kind of puts me in like a month-long loop, um, which is um, which is fun. It's like eternally motivating, but at some point I want to make another longer feature. Um, but yeah, I think the time will come for that.
Cool. Anything else that you'd wanted to hit on or talk about or discuss that we didn't really dive into?
I want to give a shout out to Jake Jimis and Daisy May, who run the fest with me. Um, I did it with somebody for a few months, and then lost them, and then was doing it on my own for several months, and then Jake and Daisy saw me in triage mode and were excited enough about it to come in and want to do it, and it's been so much more fun to operate it with the two of them, and I feel like it's really expanded like what we've been able to do
Mm-hmm.
and how creative we can be with it. um and maybe I'll just add that it's the first Saturday of every month at Spiral House, 19 Church Street in Burlington. um and pretty soon we're going to be having our second MAFF, which is Mothership Annual Film Fest. So it's going to be like our year retrospective event, which would be like our sort of Oscars gala, if you will, which is going to be super super fun. We're cooking on some big ideas for that.
Yeah, we should also probably mention too, like just general format. Whoever is the audience favorite gets to then choose the following month's theme. Yeah.
Yes.
and
Yep.
it's and it's not just about films too. You also have performers, and it's really like a big to do with all sorts of entertainment stuff going on all at once.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that sort of like came up pretty quickly, where I was like wanting to feel more like this like live theatrical event. I was like, let's have a performer every time. And now now that I have like two other people with me, we also do some sort of silly bit to start off the fest. And yeah, and then like the audience votes for their favorite film, which is super fun because we have like actually like writing it all on pieces of paper, and then like there's two people in the back counting them all while we do a Q&A with all the filmmakers. And by the end, by the end of that Q&A session, we get to announce it and we give them like a custom made award. I don't know. The whole setup is fun.
It's like DIY at its finest.
Yeah. Yeah. I like that.
Yeah, and I'm long overdue to submit another film, so I'll have to get working on that myself.
Oh yeah, your phone is gonna kill you. I love that one. Yeah, well this month is a 2-monther. We do that like once a year, but yeah, so July is a little break. So we'll be back in the beginning of August. So you got 2 months to crank out something really good if you want.
All right, man, well, I don't want to keep you too much longer. Super appreciate you taking the time, and yeah, I'm sure we will be in touch sooner or later.
I'm sure we will. Thank you, Brian, for having me on. I'm really excited about the website and the network that you're trying to grow. I think it's really important to the community of filmmakers here. Yeah, I think there's a lot to come for Vermont film. Thanks in part to people like you.
You as well, my friend. You as well. There's an old, perhaps overdone saying that a rising tide lifts all ships, or something to that nature. And I think a lot of what Mothership is doing in Dillon and his contemporaries up in Burlington is a really pure example of that. They're providing the space, a safe space, for people to come and express themselves and to support each other's work. And it's consistency. That's what we really need. That's how things get done and how things continue to get done, is reliance and consistency and knowing that it's going to be there for you when you need to turn to it. I feel super lucky to have this conversation with Dillon. I really feel a kindred spirit in him. He's doing great things up there in Burlington with the Mothership Monthly Film Festival and creating a space for people to come and celebrate art. And also there's something really special in his own work. I can't state enough how much I really enjoyed watching Roland Mary and how much of a interpersonal and real and human story it was. Those are the kind of stories that we need to be sharing, we need to be telling, and the kind of stories that are an embarrassment of riches here in this state. I hope you all enjoyed listening to Dillon's story and the work that he's doing as much as I had talking to him about it. This has been the Film in Vermont podcast, and thank you so much for tuning in. Till next time.